The Galactic Nexus Café floated in neutral space, a crystalline structure where 1,000 species mingled under the Treaty of Peace. Empress Zarathix of the Dragon Throne entered with scales shimmering like molten gold, her presence commanding immediate silence. Beings from across the cosmos stepped aside, some bowing, others simply recognizing predator instinct when they saw it. At her side walked Melissa, the Empress's adopted daughter. Where Zarathix was fire and fury incarnate, Melissa was quiet waters, a human child of perhaps 8 years with dark eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. She wore robes of silver that marked her as imperial, but her small hand gripped her mother's clawed finger with the universal desperation of a child in an overwhelming place. Melissa had not spoken a word since Zarathix had found her 3 years ago on the dead colony of Terra Firma 7. The Empress had raised the slaver's fortress that held the child, reducing it to atomic dust. Every specialist in the Empire, from mindwalkers of Scion 9 to the singing healers of Melodia, had examined the girl. The diagnosis was always the same: physically capable of speech, but silent by choice or trauma. The Empress had learned to communicate through touch, through expression, through the subtle language of a mother who would burn star systems for her daughter. But she knew Melissa lived in isolation, cut off from other children, unable to express the thoughts that surely swirled behind those ancient eyes. "A table for 2, Zarathix announced, her voice carrying the harmonic resonance that made lesser beings tremble. The cafe's AI host, a shimmering hologram of neutral design, immediately complied. They settled into a corner booth with a view of the stellar nebula beyond. Melissa pressed her face to the transparent wall, watching ships drift past like luminous fish in an endless ocean. Zarathix ordered. Nutritional supplements modified for human biology, one of countless adaptations she'd made for her daughter. That's when she noticed them. 2 tables away sat a human male with a small boy, perhaps 6 years old. The man was unremarkable by galactic standards. No scales, no extra limbs, no bioluminescence. Just the standard human frame in casual station wear. But the Empress's predator eyes caught something unusual in their interaction. The boy was moving his hands in rapid, deliberate patterns. The father responded in kind, his fingers dancing through the air in what was clearly communication. They were both smiling, engaged in animated conversation without a single word being spoken. Melissa had seen them too. She'd gone completely still, her meal forgotten, watching the human pair with an intensity that made Zarathix's hearts ache. The Empress knew every major language in the known galaxy. She had translators, telepaths, and universal decoding matrices at her disposal. But this was different. This was something deeply human, something her vast empire had never needed to understand. She watched as Melissa slowly raised her own small hands, attempting to mimic the patterns she saw. The movements were clumsy, uncertain, but filled with desperate hope. Zarathix froze. In 3 years, this was the first time her daughter had attempted to communicate with anyone beyond her. The human father noticed Melissa's attempts. He glanced at his son, then at the small human girl in imperial robes sitting beside the most feared warrior in the quadrant. For a moment, recognition flickered in his eyes, not of royalty, but of something more fundamental. The recognition of a parent seeing another child in need. William stood slowly, approaching their table with his son. Most species would never dare approach the Dragon Empress uninvited. But humans, Zarathix had learned, operated on different instincts. They saw need before they saw danger. "Excuse me," William said, his voice gentle. He made a gesture that needed no translation, a request for permission to come closer. His son, clutching his father's hand, watched Melissa with curious, friendly eyes. Zarathix could have incinerated him with a thought. Instead, she found herself nodding, unable to speak, unable to do anything but watch as her daughter's eyes filled with something she hadn't seen before. Possibility. William knelt down to Melissa's level. His hands moved slowly, deliberately, forming shapes in the air. His son copied him. Together they were teaching. "Hello," the gestures said. "My name is William. This is my son, James. We use sign language." Melissa's hands trembled as she copied the motions. Imperfect, uncertain, but there. Real. Communication. William smiled and continued, patient as starlight. Over the next 20 minutes, the cafe faded away. The Empress of the Dragon Throne, conqueror of systems, destroyer of fleets, sat motionless as a human father taught her daughter the language of Earth's deaf community. James, eager to have a new friend, showed Melissa signs for happy, friend, and stars. When Melissa successfully signed thank you back to them, tears rolled down Zarathix's scaled cheeks, evaporating into steam. William stood, preparing to leave, but the Empress caught his arm. Her claws, which had torn through battle armor and ship hulls, rested gently on his shoulder. "You have given my daughter something an empire could not provide," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Name your price, worlds, wealth, protection, anything." William looked at his son, then at Melissa, who was still practicing the signs with fierce concentration. He smiled, that peculiar human expression that somehow conveyed warmth across species barriers. "Just let her be a kid," he said simply. "Let her talk however she needs to talk. That's all any child needs." The Dragon Empress, who had never bowed to any being, inclined her head in respect. As William and James returned to their table, Melissa tugged her mother's arm. Her hands moved, shaky but deliberate, forming the sign William had taught her. Happy, Zarathix pulled her daughter close, feeling the human child's heartbeat against her scales. Around them, the cafe's other patrons whispered in dozens of languages about what they'd witnessed. The moment the most powerful being in the galaxy learned that strength wasn't always measured in firepower or fear. Sometimes, it was measured in the simple grace of a father who saw a child in need and chose kindness over caution. Sometimes, humanity's greatest weapon was simply being human, and in that moment, watching Melissa's hands form words in the air, the Dragon Empress understood why Earth, despite being small and technologically inferior, could never truly be conquered, because humans didn't just survive. They connected. They reached across impossible divides. They taught dragons how to listen to silence. Melissa looked up at her mother and signed again, home, love, happy. Zarathix signed back, the gestures already becoming natural to her warrior's hands. Always.